Sua. Right now, your mind may be lying awake inside a question that has never answered you. Maybe the room is quiet, but somewhere within you, an old sentence keeps turning over. Why did it happen that way? Why did they leave without explaining? Why did no one notice what it cost you? Why did you say what you said? Or fail to say what still aches inside your chest? Maybe you are not even looking for something large anymore. Maybe you are only looking for one small reason, one sentence, one clear reply from life that would let your body finally believe it is allowed to sleep. And maybe you have felt this too, dear friend. The strange tiredness of needing an answer before you can rest, the way the mind becomes like a hand, searching in the dark for a missing letter, touching the same places again and again, even though nothing new appears. Your body may be heavy, your eyes may be tired, your breath may already want to slow down, but the mind keeps whispering, not yet. Not yet, we have not understood it yet. So for now, let the night around you be simple. Feel the blanket near your legs, the quiet weight of it resting over the body. Feel the pillow beneath your head, holding you without asking anything in return. Perhaps there is a dim light somewhere in the room, softened by distance, or a thin line of moonlight resting near the wall, pale and gentle, like paper touched by water. Perhaps the air is cool against your face. Perhaps there are faint sounds far away, a vehicle passing, a floor settling, a dog barking once, and then falling silent again. Nothing here needs to become important. These sounds can come and go without needing your attention. If it feels right, take a slow breath, not a perfect breath, not a deep breath that proves you are calm, just one honest breath, entering the body as it is. And when you breathe out, let your shoulders loosen even a little. Let the jaw stop holding the day. Let the tongue soften from the roof of the mouth. Let your hands be ordinary hands again, no longer gripping an invisible answer. You do not need to force anything. Nothing is required of you now. You are safe enough to soften, even if only by the smallest amount. Tonight, we will not force the mind to be silent. A forced silence is only another kind of noise. We will not argue with your thoughts, or shame them, or tell them they should not be here. We will not pretend that your unanswered questions do not matter. They do matter. The heart asks questions because it has loved, because it has lost, because it has cared enough to be wounded by confusion. But what you are feeling is not failure. You are not broken because your mind wants a reason. You are not weak because some unfinished thing still touches you at night. You are not behind because you have not made peace with what never explained itself. There are pains that do not arrive with instructions. There are endings that close like doors without telling us why they had to close. There are people who leave no note, mistakes that cannot be undone, years that seem to ask more from us than we knew how to give. And when the mind cannot find an answer, it often begins to believe that peace is impossible. But here is the quiet paradox that Buddhist wisdom offers like a lamp cupped in both hands. The mind does not become peaceful because life finally explains everything. The mind begins to soften when it no longer treats every unanswered question as a command to suffer. This does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean the question disappears. It does not mean the past becomes acceptable or that what hurt you suddenly becomes fair. It only means that the question can remain unopened for tonight and still your breath may return to you. It means the heart can lie down before the whole story is complete. Perhaps, without noticing, you have been sleeping on sealed letters. Every unanswered why, every missing apology, every unfinished conversation, every confusing loss, every private ache you have tried to solve in the dark has become like a letter tucked beneath your pillow. Some are thin and almost weightless. Some are thick with ink. Some are old and folded many times. Some still feel freshly sealed, as if the wax has not cooled, and night after night, your tired head rests upon them, and when sleep does not come, you think the problem is that the letters have not been opened. So you turn them over in the mind. You press them. You imagine what might be written inside. You guess the words of the person who never spoke them. You invent the confession, the explanation, the hidden truth, the reason that would make the pain clean and understandable. Maybe you tell yourself, if I could just know why, I would stop hurting. If I could understand what they meant, I would stop replaying it. If I could find the missing piece, I would finally become free. But sometimes, dear friend, the suffering is no longer only in the letter, it is in the pressing. It is in the way we keep our head against the hard edge of the unanswered thing and call that pressure devotion to truth. It is in the way we mistake exhaustion for healing. It is in the way we tear at the seal with our thoughts until even the paper of the heart grows thin. Maybe you've been doing this for a long time. Maybe you have carried one question from year to year, from room to room, from one version of yourself to another. Maybe others think you have moved on because you learned how to speak, work, smile, answer messages, and get through the day. But when night comes and the world grows less demanding, the old letter is still there beneath the pillow. Why did that happen? Why was I not chosen? Why was I misunderstood? Why did I not know better? Why did they not come back? Why did life take that shape and not another? Let the questions be known, but do not chase them yet. Let them appear like envelopes in a quiet room. You do not have to open them with tired hands. You do not have to solve your whole life tonight. The Buddha pointed again and again toward a simple truth that can feel very difficult at first. Suffering is not only what happens to us. Suffering also grows from the way the mind clings, resists, repeats, demands, and refuses to let the present moment be incomplete. And life, as you already know, is often incomplete. It leaves spaces. It leaves unfinished sentences. It leaves footsteps that fade before we know where they were going. Still, the breath is here. Still, the body is here. Still, the night is offering a small shelter. Not because every answer has arrived, but because this moment does not require every answer. You might feel the pillow again beneath your head, not as a place where questions must be crushed or solved, but as a place where the body can be held. Notice the difference between holding a question and being held hostage by it. A question may sit beside you gently. A question may remain sealed. A question may wait until morning or another season, or perhaps forever. But it does not have to become the master of your breath. In a moment, this will become clearer through a story of rain, cedar wood, and a letter tied with indigo thread. But before we walk there, let your body arrive more fully where it already is. Feel the back of your body supported. Feel the quiet contact between fabric and skin. Let your forehead smooth, as if the night itself has placed a cool palm there. Let your eyelids be heavy, if they wish to be heavy. Even if your eyes remain open, something in you can begin to unclench. There is no need to become peaceful all at once. Peace that is forced often feels like another task, and you have carried enough tasks. This is not a task. This is a return, a slow return, from the hard room of explanation to the softer room of breathing. From the mind, demanding a verdict to the body, remembering that it is allowed to be tired, from the sealed letter. Beneath the pillow, to the quiet possibility of placing it beside the lamp. Maybe tonight, one unanswered question is asking for your attention. Not all of them, just one. The one that has been making the most noise. The one that appears when the lights are low. The one you have tried to reason with, bargain with, push away, or solve by imagining every possible version of the past. You do not need to tell it to leave. You do not need to believe everything it says. You can simply notice it. There it is, a letter, folded, sealed, not ready to open, and maybe for the first time in a long while, you do not have to tear at it tonight. Let the breath move in, let the breath move out, let the room remain quiet. Let the moonlight, if you imagine it, fall softly over the sealed paper. Let the question exist, without letting it climb into your chest and take command of the whole night. What you are feeling is not failure, it is the ache of a heart that wanted life to be understandable before it felt safe. And this is deeply human. Every person, in their own hidden way, has held a sealed letter from life. Every person has waited for words that never came. Every person has tried, at least once, to make peace by demanding that the past explain itself. But perhaps peace is not waiting inside the explanation. Perhaps peace begins in the moment. You stop making your rest depend on the seal breaking open. Tonight, dear friend, we are not here to erase your questions. We are here to help your tired hands release their grip around them. We are here to learn the gentleness of letting a sealed letter remain sealed for one more night. We are here to discover that your breath does not need permission from the past. Your body does not need an apology before it can soften. Your heart does not need to solve every mystery before it is worthy of being held. Take another slow breath if it feels right. Let it enter quietly. Let it leave without effort. And as the breath leaves, imagine that some small part of the pressure under your pillow has shifted. The letters are still there, perhaps, but they are no longer sharp in the same way. They are only paper, ink, thread, silence. Unfinished words resting in the dark. You are here. The night is here. The next breath is already arriving without explanation. And for now, that may be enough to begin. Sewer. Long ago, in a mountain province, where the roads were narrow and the clouds often came down, low enough to touch the roofs, there lived a young courier named Talon. He was not a monk, not a scholar, not someone who thought of himself as wise. He was simply the one villagers trusted when a message had to cross difficult ground. He knew where the stones became slippery after rain. He knew which bridge groaned. In winter, he knew the sound of wild bamboo bending before a storm. His life was made of footsteps, folded paper, names written carefully, and the quiet duty of carrying words from one heart to another. During the day, Talon seemed steady. He tied letters beneath his coat with oilcloth. He bowed at doorways. He waited while old hands searched for coins. He never opened what was not meant for him. The villagers said he had an honest face and a patient walk. But at night, when his work was finished, there was one letter he could not stop touching. It was small, sealed with dark wax, and tied with a thin indigo cotton thread. The paper had softened at the corners from being held too often. No address remained on the outside. Rain had blurred it months before. But Talon knew who had written it, or believed he knew. He had once carried it toward a person he loved, someone who had left the village without farewell. The letter had been returned to him unopened, without explanation, as if the world had placed a question back into his hands and then gone silent. Since then, he carried it everywhere. He told himself it was only because he did not know where else to put it. But every night, after his lamp was lowered and the mountain wind moved along the shutters, he untied the indigo thread, then stopped before breaking the wax. He would hold the letter near the flame, not close enough to burn it, only close enough to see the seal shine, and his mind would begin again. What if the answer is inside? What if there is a reason? What if one sentence could explain why someone can vanish from your life and leave the heart standing in an open doorway? He never opened it. Some part of him was afraid. The letter would say nothing that healed him. Another part was afraid. It would say exactly what he feared. So he kept it sealed, but not at peace, sealed, but not released. Near him, always like a small hard stone beneath the spirit. One autumn night, rain began before sunset and did not stop. It fell softly at first, then steadily, filling the mountain paths with the scent of wet cedar and loosened earth. Talon had been sent beyond the north ridge, with 3 letters wrapped beneath his cloak. By the time he returned, his sandals were dark with mud. His sleeves were heavy, and the lantern at his belt had nearly gone out. He could have gone home, but his feet, tired as they were, turned toward a small postal shrine beside the cedar path. It was an old place, older than the village below, built for travelers who carried messages through the mountains. Its roof curved under moss, its paper screens glowed with weak amber light. Along the eaves hung wooden tags marked with names of roads that no longer existed. People came there when a letter could not be delivered, when a message was returned, when a name had no house, when a question had no living mouth to answer it. Inside the shrine lived Sister Arai, an elderly nun who had once walked the same courier paths in her youth. No one knew exactly how old she was. Her hair was silver and cut short. Her back had a slight bend, not from weakness, but from many years of bowing to things that could not be changed. She kept the shrine clean, sorted undelivered letters, dried wet paper, and lit lamps for travelers who arrived after dark. When Talon stepped inside, water dripped from the hem of his coat onto the wooden floor. Sister Orai looked up from a low table where she was mending a torn envelope with rice paste. "You are carrying rain," she said. Talon bowed. "And one thing heavier." She nodded toward the hearth. There was no large fire, only a bed of coals and a small kettle, whispering steam. The room smelled of cedar smoke, damp paper, old ink, and the faint bitterness of tea leaves. He removed the delivered letters from beneath his coat and placed them in the shrine box. Then, after a long silence, he reached into the inner fold of his robe and took out the small sealed letter tied with indigo thread. Sister Orai did not lean forward. She did not ask whose it was. She only watched the way his fingers held it, too tightly for paper. "I need to open this," Talon said. The rain tapped the roof. Somewhere behind the shrine, water ran from a bamboo pipe into a stone basin, one drop after another. "Then open it," she said. His face tightened. "I cannot." "Then do not open it." "I cannot do that either." Sister Arai returned to smoothing the torn envelope before her. Her fingers moved slowly, pressing the thin seam until the paper lay flat. Talon felt irritation rise in him, sharp and familiar. He had walked through rain. He had come to a place where undelivered words were kept. He had shown her the private weight he carried. And still, she offered nothing that sounded like an answer. I thought you might know how to open a letter without damaging it, he said. There are many ways to open paper, she replied. There are fewer ways to open a heart without tearing it. The words settled into the room, not as a teaching, but as something placed carefully on a shelf. Talon looked away. On the walls around him were rows and rows of letters. Some were bundled in twine. Some were wrapped in cloth. Some had names written in faded brushstrokes. Some had no markings at all. A few were kept in shallow wooden trays near the hearth, drying after water damage. Others were tucked into narrow shelves that climbed all the way to the beams. He had seen them before, but never really looked. How many? He asked. Enough, said Sister Ori. Enough for what? Enough to show that no one walks through life without carrying words that did not arrive. Talon swallowed. The letter in his hand felt warmer now, warmed by his palm, as if it had a body of its own. These letters are useless if no one opens them, he said. Sister Ori lifted the kettle and poured tea into a clay cup. The stream was thin, steady, pale green in the low light. She placed the cup near him and then reached for a folded sleeping mat from the corner. Come, she said. He frowned. I did not come here to sleep. No, she said. You came because you cannot. She spread the mat on the floor beside the shelves. Then she held out her hand. After a moment, Talon gave her the letter. The instant it left his fingers, his chest felt exposed, as if something had been taken from beneath his ribs. He almost reached for it again. Sister Ori noticed, but did not comment. She placed the sealed letter beneath the folded edge of the sleeping mat, exactly where his head would rest if he lay down. Talon stared at her. What are you doing? Putting the letter where you have kept it. I have never put it under my pillow. Sister Ori looked at him quietly. His first impulse was to argue. But the rain was still falling. The tea was steaming. The lamp flame was small and patient. And something about the room made false words difficult. He looked at the folded mat. He looked at the letter hidden beneath it. He thought of all the nights he had lain awake, touching the letter in his mind, even when it was across the room. He thought of how many times he had turned his head on the pillow, searching for a cooler place, as if the bedding were the reason sleep would not come. He thought of the hard pressure in his chest whenever the old question returned. Why did they go? Why was nothing explained? Why was I left with this silence? Sister Ori lowered herself onto a cushion nearby. Lie down, she said. I cannot sleep on that. Then, perhaps you can finally feel what you have been asking your mind to do. Talon did not move. Outside, the mountain rain thickened. It blurred the path, softened the edges of the world, made the shrine feel like the only dry room left beneath the sky. After a long while, Talon knelt beside the mat. He did not lie down. He pressed his palm over the place where the letter rested beneath the fold. The paper made no sound. It did not accuse him. It did not demand to be opened. It simply existed there, thin and silent. A strange sadness moved through him, quieter than anger. He realized that, for months, he had treated the letter as if it were alive with intention, refusing him, punishing him, withholding mercy. But beneath his palm, it was only paper, thread, wax, and unanswered ink. The pain was real, but the letter was not pressing up into him. He had been pressing down upon it. Something in his face changed then. Not relief exactly. Not understanding in the bright way people imagine understanding should arrive. It was more like the first loosening of a knot that had forgotten it was a knot. Sister Ori watched him with the kindness of someone who did not need his realization to be dramatic. If I do not open it, he whispered, Then I may never know. Yes, she said. The word was not cruel, it was clean. It did not add anything. Talon closed his eyes. And if I open it, you may still not know. His breath caught. The lamp flickered once, then steadied. For the first time, Talon saw the secret fear beneath his search. He had not only wanted the letter opened, he had wanted the opened letter to save him from the pain of not being able to change what had happened. He had wanted words to make the leaving gentle. He had wanted explanation to become a bridge back to a life that no longer existed. The deeper lesson had not yet become words inside him, but it had begun to breathe. Slowly, he lifted the edge of the mat and took the letter out. The indigo thread was still tied. The wax was still unbroken. He held it differently now, not like a door he had to break through, but like a small, tired thing that had also travelled too far. Where should I put it? He asked. Sister Ori pointed to the low table beside the lamp. Not beneath your head, she said. Talon placed the letter there. The action was simple. No thunder came. No vision opened. No voice from the past filled the room. Only a small letter moved from beneath the place of sleep to the edge of lamplight, and yet his body felt the difference. He lay down on the mat. For a while his eyes remained open. He could see the letter from where he rested. It was still sealed. It still held whatever it held. Or perhaps nothing that would ever satisfy the ache in him. But it was no longer under his head. It was no longer being pressed into the softest place of the night. Sister Ori poured a second cup of tea and drank without hurry. Talon listened to the rain. He listened to the bamboo pipe dripping into the basin. He listened to the small sounds of the old shrine. Paper settling, wood cooling, the quiet breath of a woman who had spent her life among messages that did not arrive. The question was still there. But something else was there too. The mat beneath him, the warmth of tea in his stomach, the cedar scent, the dry room, the lamp, his own breath, coming and going, without asking permission from the sealed letter. Before sleep touched him, Talon turned his face slightly towards Sister Ori. What if I wake and want to open it again? She did not look up from her cup. Then you will know the letter has not moved, she said. Only the hand has returned. Talon let those words enter slowly. The rain continued beyond the shrine, washing the dark path, softening the mountain, carrying leaves into the unseen stream below. And beside the little lamp, the sealed letter remained exactly as it was, no more open than before, no more closed than before, while the young courier's breathing grew quieter in the room of undelivered things. Sua. And maybe, dear friend, something in you can understand Talon. Not because your life looks like his. Not because you have walked through mountain rain with a letter beneath your coat, but because you know what it is to carry a sealed question through ordinary days. You know what it is to appear functional, polite, capable, even calm, while some part of you keeps returning to the same unopened place. There may be a question you have carried so long that it no longer feels like a question. It feels like part of your identity. It travels with you into conversations. It sits beside you while you eat. It waits near the edge of the bed. It enters the quiet room before sleep and says, "We are not finished." And, perhaps for a long time, you believed that healing meant opening the letter, finding the reason, hearing the apology, receiving the confession, understanding the hidden pattern that would finally make the ache loosen its grip. But the story of Talon is not telling us to stop feeling. It is not asking us to become cold, detached in the way people sometimes misunderstand detachment. as if wisdom means having no tenderness left. It is not saying that the letter does not matter. It is not saying that what happened was small. It is showing us something quieter, something that can only be noticed when the room becomes still. The suffering was not only in what happened, it was also in the way the mind held what happened. This is one of the gentle doors Buddhist wisdom opens for us. It does not deny pain. It does not ask us to smile over wounds or decorate confusion with spiritual words. It simply invites us to look closely, with kindness, at the extra suffering the mind adds after pain has already arrived. There is the first wound, the one life gives. Someone leaves. Something ends. A promise is broken. A mistake cannot be undone. An answer never comes. The first wound is real. It deserves compassion. But then the mind, frightened and aching, often creates a second wound. It says, "This should not have happened. I must understand it before I can breathe. I cannot rest until the missing person, the missing reason, the missing certainty returns to me pines. I must keep replaying it. I must keep pressing. I must keep my head on the sealed letter until the seal breaks." And slowly, without meaning to, the mind turns pain into a prison. Buddhist wisdom helps us notice this second wound, not with blame, but with mercy, because the mind is not doing this to punish you. The mind is trying to protect you in the only way. It knows. It believes that if it can explain the pain completely, then perhaps the pain will not happen again. It believes that if it can understand every movement of the past, then the future can be controlled. It believes that if the letter opens, the heart will finally be safe. Maybe you have felt this too. Maybe you have replayed one conversation, not because you enjoy suffering, but because some frightened part of you thought the replay might reveal the sentence that would save you. Maybe you have examined someone's silence from every direction, not because you are weak, but because uncertainty made your nervous system feel as if the ground had disappeared. Maybe you kept asking why, because the unanswered place felt too open, too exposed, too much like standing in a doorway after the house has gone dark. So let this be soft inside you. There is nothing shameful about wanting an answer. Attachment in this kind of night may not look like greed or clinging to possessions. It may look like the tight inner belief that says, unless I understand this, I cannot be okay. It may feel like a fist around a story. It may feel like the body waiting for permission from the past. It may feel like your peace has been locked inside an envelope, and only someone else has the right to open it. Craving may not look dramatic. It may simply be the hunger for one sentence that would make the heart stop searching. The craving for closure, the craving for certainty, the craving for a life that explains itself neatly before it changes. And because this craving feels so reasonable, we often do not see how much it exhausts us. But life is rarely neat. People are rarely able to explain themselves completely. Even when they try, the explanation may not be enough. Sometimes a person gives you reasons, and still the deeper wound remains. Sometimes life answers one question and leaves 3 more behind. Sometimes the letter opens, and inside there is only another folded page. This is why Talon's moment in the shrine mattered. Sister Orai did not tell him that the letter was meaningless. She did not tear it from his hands. She did not say, "Forget it, move on, be stronger." She simply placed it where he had been keeping it all along, so he could feel the pressure clearly. Not beneath his coat, not in his hand, beneath the place where he was trying to rest. And this is where the teaching begins to touch your own heart. What question have you been placing beneath your sleep? What explanation has your tired mind been using as a pillow, even though it has hard edges? Perhaps it is the question of why someone changed. Perhaps it is why you were treated with less care than you gave. Perhaps it is why you did not receive the tenderness you needed when you were young. Perhaps it is why a door closed after you had already imagined a life beyond it. Perhaps it is why you made a choice you now wish you could undo. You do not have to answer that question right now. Just notice the weight of it. Mindfulness, in this moment, does not mean emptying the mind. It means seeing clearly. It is the simple, brave act of noticing. Ah, this is the letter I keep sleeping on. This is the thought I keep treating as urgent. This is the place where my mind presses against the past and calls the pressure love, or justice, or wisdom, or protection. To notice, this is already a soft kind of freedom. Because when you can see a thought, you are not entirely trapped inside it. When you can name the letter, you do not have to become the letter. When you can feel the hand returning to the seal, you have a small space in which to choose gentleness. And this space is precious. Awareness is not loud. It does not arrive like a command. It is more like lamplight touching the edge of the table. It does not force the letter open. It simply shows where the letter is. It shows the hand. It shows the breath. It shows the tired body asking, "May I rest now?" even if the answer has not come. And compassion is what says yes. Compassion is not pity. It is not weakness. It is the strength to meet your own suffering without adding insult to it. It is the voice within you that says, "Of course you wanted to understand. Of course this hurt. Of course the silence felt unbearable. But dear one, you do not have to keep tearing yourself open, because life did not open for you." The Buddha pointed toward impermanence, not as a cold doctrine, but as an intimate truth moving through every room of our lives. Nothing stays exactly as it was. Not the joy we wanted to keep. Not the pain we feared would last forever. Not the version of us that first received the wound. Even the question itself changes as we change. What felt like a demand 5 years ago may one day feel like a whisper. What once burned in the chest may one day become a folded paper we can touch without bleeding. Impermanence does not mean nothing matters. It means nothing can be held in the same way forever. And perhaps this is part of the mercy hidden inside life. Even unanswered questions do not remain the same. When they are held with awareness, the letter may stay sealed, but the hand softens. The ink may remain unread, but the body learns it does not have to lean its whole weight upon it. The past may not explain itself, but the present becomes available again. One breath at a time. Letting go, then, is not throwing the letter away. It is not pretending you never cared about what was written inside. It is not forcing yourself to be above pain. Letting go is moving the letter from beneath your head to the table beside the lamp. It is changing your relationship with the question. It is allowing the unanswered thing to exist, without letting it decide whether your lungs may open, whether your shoulders may drop, whether sleep may come near. This kind of letting go is humble. It does not announce itself. It may not even feel like freedom at first. It may feel like grief. It may feel like surrender. It may feel like the mind saying, "But what if we never know?" And the heart answering, "Then we will learn how to breathe beside not knowing." That is not failure. That is wisdom becoming tender enough to enter the body. There may still be nights when the hand returns. Sister or I said this simply. The letter has not moved. Only the hand has returned. And this is important, dear friend, because healing does not mean the old movement never comes back. It means that when it comes back, you begin to recognize it. You recognize the reach. You recognize the tightening. You recognize the familiar bargain. If I think long enough, maybe I can make pain obey me. And once you recognize it, even gently, you are already less asleep inside the pattern. You can pause. You can breathe. You can say inwardly, "This is a sealed letter. I do not need to open it in the dark." Maybe tomorrow, with more steadiness, you can reflect. Maybe someday, with support, you can speak about it. Maybe there will be a time for understanding, conversation, repair, or a choice that brings clarity. Buddhist wisdom is not asking you to abandon wise action. It is not asking you to become passive. It is simply reminding you that rumination at midnight is not the same as understanding. Pressing on the wound is not the same as healing it. Holding your breath for an answer is not the same as honoring the truth. There is a time to read. There is a time to write. There is a time to place the letter down, and tonight, perhaps, is the time to place it down. Not far away, not destroyed, not denied, only moved gently from the tender place where your rest should be. Feel this for a moment in your own body. The possibility that peace does not require every seal to break. The possibility that the unanswered question can be near you without being inside your throat. The possibility that you can care deeply and still stop pressing. The possibility that some part of you has been waiting, not for the explanation, but for permission to stop making the explanation the doorway to sleep. You are allowed to rest before you understand. You are allowed to soften before the story makes sense. You are allowed to be kind to yourself in the presence of an unfinished thing. And if the mind objects, let it object gently. It has been working so hard to protect you. It has been sorting through old ink, old paper, old words, trying to find the one line that would make everything safe. Do not hate the mind for this. Bow inwardly to its effort, as Sister or I might bow to a traveler arriving soaked from the rain. Then offer it something warmer than another argument. Offer it breath. Offer it the quiet room. Offer it the feeling of the body supported. Offer it the understanding that not every question has to be answered by midnight. Slowly, the teaching becomes personal, not as an idea to believe, but as a small movement you can feel. The hand loosens from the seal. The head lifts from the hidden pressure. The pillow becomes a pillow again. The night becomes not a courtroom where the past must testify, but a shelter where even unanswered things can grow quiet. And in this shelter, dear friend, you may begin to sense something simple and almost forgotten. The next breath does not need the letter to open. It comes anyway, softly, without explanation, already giving you permission to be here. Su'a. So perhaps, for these next few moments, you do not need to think about your whole life. You do not need to gather every question at once. You do not need to search through every year, every face, every unanswered message, every silence that still has a shape inside you. Let this be much smaller than that. Let it become as small as one breath entering, one breath leaving, as small as the feeling of your body being here, in this room, at this hour, held by the quiet weight beneath you. If it feels right, let your attention drift toward the breath, not to control it, not to make it spiritual, just to notice that it is already moving. The breath comes in and the body receives it. The breath goes out and the body releases it. Somewhere, that's a simple movement. There is a kind of wisdom older than thought. Your body has been practicing receiving and releasing since before. You knew how to ask. Why? It has known quietly that not everything must be held. It has known that what enters may leave, and what leaves does not always need an explanation. Perhaps you can let the next inhale arrive like a small piece of cool night air, and perhaps you can let the next exhale leave like a letter set down gently on a table. There is no need to force this. If the breath feels shallow, let it be shallow. If the mind wanders, let it wander and return when it can. If some part of you feels restless, uncertain, or unconvinced, that too may be allowed. This practice is not a test. It is not something you can fail. Even noticing that you are tense is already a kind of softening, because it means awareness has come near. Now, dear friend, bring kindness to the body. Let the forehead loosen, as if the skin there no longer has to hold the question. Let the space around the eyes soften. So much searching happens behind the eyes, so much watching, replaying, imagining, comparing one memory with another. Let the eyes rest back into the face. They do not have to read the past tonight. Let the jaw soften. Perhaps your teeth have been touching without your noticing. Perhaps the mouth has been holding words that were never spoken, replies that never found the right moment, explanations you still wish someone had stayed to hear. Let the jaw become less responsible. Let the tongue rest. Let the throat be quiet. If there is tightness in the chest, do not push it away. Let it be there like a folded letter held against the heart. It does not need to open. It does not need to vanish. You might simply say inwardly, this is where the question has been living. This is where the body learned to wait. And then let the shoulders feel the invitation to drop even slightly. Not all the way. Not perfectly. Just enough for the body to understand that it is no longer standing before a locked door. Let the arms grow heavier. Let the hands uncurl. The hands are often the last place where the mind continues. It's labor. They grip even when nothing is there. They hold the air as if an answer might be caught there. Let them be simple hands again. Warm or cool, open or resting, empty but not abandoned. Now perhaps allow one question to come forward. Only one. Not the biggest one if that feels too much. Not the oldest one if the body says no. Choose the question that is already close to the surface. The one that has been knocking softly in the background of this night. It may begin with why. It may have no words at all. It may be only a feeling of unfinishedness, a pressure, a waiting, a place in you that leans toward the past. You do not need to solve it. You do not need to explain it. Just notice it. Maybe it is connected to a person. Maybe to a decision. Maybe to something that ended without your consent. Maybe to a part of your life where you keep thinking, if only I understood, I could finally stop hurting. Let the question become visible in the gentlest way. Imagine that it is written on paper, not harsh paper, not official paper, just a small sheet, soft from being touched, carrying the ink of what your heart has asked so many times. You do not need to read the whole sentence. You do not need to stare at it. Perhaps you only sense that the words are there. Now imagine folding the paper once, slowly, then again, not to hide it from yourself, but to give it a kinder shape. Some things become more bearable when they are folded, not denied, not destroyed, only held in a form the night can carry. Perhaps there is an envelope near you, in the imagination, plain and quiet. Place the folded question inside. Let it slide into the envelope without force. If part of you resists, that is all right. You can pause. You can hold the paper a little longer. Nothing needs to be hurried. The heart does not trust gentleness all at once when it has spent so long bracing for answers. When you are ready, or when you can imagine being ready, let the envelope close, see the seal. Maybe it is a small circle of wax. Maybe it is a thread drawn gently around the folded paper. Let it be sealed, not as punishment, but as protection. Not because the question is unworthy, but because your tired mind is worthy of rest. This is the sealed letter of tonight. It may contain pain. It may contain confusion. It may contain the voice of someone who never spoke clearly. It may contain a younger version of you, still waiting in a room that no longer exists. Whatever it holds, let it hold it for now. You do not have to open it in the dark. Notice what happens in the body when you imagine this. Perhaps nothing changes. Perhaps the mind says, "No, I need to know." Perhaps the chest tightens. Perhaps a small sadness comes. Perhaps there is a little more space around the breath. Whatever happens is allowed. The practice is not asking for a certain result. It is only showing you that there is another way to be with the question. Instead of pressing your head against it, you may place it beside you. Imagine a low table near a quiet lamp, or the edge of a windowsill touched by moonlight, or the floor beside your bed where the night air is still. Place the sealed letter there. Let it be close enough that it does not feel abandoned, but not so close that it becomes your pillow. Look at it gently. The letter has not disappeared. The question has not been mocked or dismissed. It is simply no longer inside your hands. And perhaps this is where the mind begins to soften. Not because the answer came, but because the demand loosened. Not because life finally explained itself, but because your body felt, even for one breath, that it did not have to remain tense until explanation arrived. If the hand in your imagination reaches back toward the letter, let that be seen too. There is no need to scold the hand. It has reached so many times because it believed reaching was love. It believed reaching was protection. It believed that if it stopped searching, something precious would be lost. You might whisper inwardly gently, "I see you reaching." Then let the hand rest again. Maybe place that hand over the heart, if it feels natural, or let it rest on the blanket. Feel the warmth, the weight, the simple contact. The heart beneath the hand does not need a perfect explanation. In order to beat, it is already continuing. It has continued through days when no answer came. It's continued through nights when the mind turned every page of memory and found no final sentence. This is not a reason to demand more from the heart. It is a reason to be tender with it. Take another slow breath, if you can. Imagine the breath entering the space where the question used to press. Imagine it moving around the edges of that place, not erasing it, only bringing air to it. Like opening a window in a room full of old paper. Nothing is thrown away. Nothing is forced into brightness, but the air changes. The room becomes less stale. The letters can remain, and still the room can breathe. Now listen. If there are sounds around you, a distant hum, a small creak, the faint movement of air, the low silence between sounds, each one arrives, without asking, to be understood. Each one passes, without explaining where it goes. The body can hear them and remain here. The mind does not need to follow every sound into a story. In the same way, perhaps the mind does not need to follow every question into the old corridors tonight. You can return to the feeling of the pillow, the blanket, the room, the breath, the sealed letter resting nearby. If the question grows loud again, the practice is not ruined. You can come back as many times as needed. The letter may be lifted held and placed down again. The hand may return and awareness may notice. This is not failure. This is the path becoming visible in small movements. A sealed letter can be close without being carried in the mouth. A question can be honored without being obeyed. A painful memory can be real without becoming the whole room. Let the image change now, very slowly. Perhaps the letter on the table is touched by lamplight. Perhaps the wax seal softens in color, not opening, just losing its threat. Perhaps the thread around it no longer looks like a knot, but like a simple boundary. Perhaps the paper settles, as if it too has grown tired of being handled, and perhaps you notice something else in the room of the imagination. There is table beneath it. There is air above it. There is you, breathing nearby. The question is present, but it is not all that is present. This is awareness, not a bright escape from pain, but a wider room in which pain no longer has to occupy every corner. Remain there for a few breaths, if it feels right. The letter nearby, the body supported, the breath moving, the night not asking for perfection, the mind allowed to be unfinished, the heart allowed to be tired. Nothing needs to be forced. Nothing needs to be opened. Nothing needs to be answered before this breath completes itself. And when the breath leaves, let it carry only what it can carry, not the whole past, not the whole question, just a little of the pressure, just enough for the body to know there is a difference between holding a letter and becoming its seal. You can return whenever you are ready, to the pillow, to the blanket, to the quiet room, to the simple truth that for this moment, the sealed letter may rest outside your body, and you may rest inside the breath. Sur. And while the sealed letter rests there, near the edge of your inner room, let another story come softly into the night. There was once a village built along a wide grey canal where the water moved slowly past wooden docks and low houses with roofs darkened by salt air. In the early morning, before the vendors opened their shutters, mist would gather over the canal until the boats seemed to be floating inside a dream. Ropes creaked against posts, river birds called from the reeds. Somewhere, always, water touched wood with a patient sound. In that village lived a woman named Maren. She repaired boats. Her hands were strong from years of sanding planks, setting nails, sealing cracks with resin, and pulling wet rope through her palms. She could hear the weakness in a hull. By tapping it lightly, with 2 fingers, she could smell rain before the first cloud crossed the roofs. People brought their small fishing boats to her. When storms had torn them open, when the river had bitten through old boards, when careless hands had scraped them against stone. Maren was respected. She was not someone others pitied openly. She walked with steadiness. She answered clearly. She did not waste words. If a boat could be repaired, she said so. If it could not, she said that too. But once each year, on the morning when the fog was thickest, she did not open her workshop. She crossed the canal bridge, alone, and went to the archive house, near the water. The archive was a narrow building with cedar walls, and a roof patched many times with sheets of black tile inside were shelves of records. Births, deaths, marriages, storms, lost cargo, repaired boats, debts forgiven, names of travellers, names of those who never returned. The air smelled of ink, river damp, dried reeds, and old paper carefully saved from ruin. There lived Master Edo, the river archivist. He was not the kind of teacher people gathered around for grand sayings. Most days, he sat at a long table, repairing water-damaged scrolls with tiny brushes and rice paste. He kept a kettle near his elbow and a cloth for blotting ink. His robe was plain. His sandals were always placed neatly by the door. He had the calm manner of someone who had spent many years reading records of human longing and had learned not to rush any grief. Maren came to him every year carrying a folded paper, and every year the paper carried the same question. Why was I left behind? Her husband had disappeared at sea 9 years before, not in a famous storm, not in a battle, not in a story large enough for songs. He had taken a small cargo boat beyond the outer reeds and had not returned. A broken oar was found, a torn sail, 2 crates of tea leaves floating in the shallows, nothing more, no body, no final words, no explanation. At first, the village searched. Then the search became smaller. Then people began to lower their voices around her. Then seasons passed, and life, as it does, continued with a kind of quiet cruelty. Nets still needed mending, rice still needed washing, children still grew taller, roofs still leaked, boats still split in winter. But Maren remained inwardly standing at the edge of the canal, waiting for the water to answer. Every year, she wrote the same question and brought it to Master Ido. At first, she asked him to place it in the records so that the village would not forget. Later, she asked him whether any new account had appeared from another port. Then, she asked whether a name could vanish from water and still be traced. Finally, after many years, she stopped, pretending she came for information. She came because the question had nowhere else to go. On the 9th year, the morning was pale and cold. Mist pressed against the windows of the archive. Droplets clung to the beams. Master Ido was drying a page that had been damaged by floodwater. He did not look surprised when Maren entered. She placed the folded paper on the table. Her fingers lingered on it. I wrote it again, she said. Master Ido set down his brush. The archive was very quiet. From outside came the soft knock of a loose boat against the dock. Maren looked toward the shelves. There must be a place for a question when the one who should answer is gone. Master Ido did not speak immediately. He opened a drawer beneath the table and took out a round cedar box. It was no wider than 2 hands. Its wood was pale, polished by use, and faintly fragrant. It had a lid that fit perfectly. But there was no slot in the top, no hinge, no keyhole, no address written on its side. He placed it before her. Maren looked at it. What is this? A letterbox. She turned it in her hands. It has no opening. It opens, he said. Where? Not from the outside. Her mouth tightened. Had anyone else said this to her? She might have walked out. But Master Ido's eyes were not clever. There was no game in him, only patience. I do not need a riddle, she said. No, he replied. You need a place to put what cannot be mailed. The words struck something in her, but she did not let them show. Master Ido lifted her folded question and rested it on the lid of the cedar box. Each morning, he said, before you begin your work, place the question here, not to send it away, not to receive a reply, only to stop carrying it in your mouth while your hands are needed for the day. Maren stared at the box. My hands can work while my heart waits. Yes, said Ido. They have done so for 9 years, she almost answered sharply. But her eyes fell to her hands. There were old scars across the knuckles, resin beneath one nail, a thin burn from heated pitch near her wrist. Hands that had repaired so many broken things, while one question went unrepaired inside her. She took the box. For many mornings, she hated it. She placed it on the workbench near the window where the canal light came in. Before lifting her tools, she would write the question again. Sometimes the exact words, sometimes only his name, sometimes no words at all, only a line darkened by the pressure of her brush. Then she would set the paper on the lid of the cedar box. At first, this changed nothing. The grief remained. The anger remained. The question returned while she worked. It came when the hammer struck wrong. It came when she smelled seaweed on a customer's coat. It came when two gulls crossed the morning sky, and one turned back while the other flew on. Why was I left behind? Why did the water take the answer too? Why must life keep asking me to continue when it will not explain what it has taken? Sometimes she snatched the paper back from the box and held it in her fist. Sometimes she pressed the lid as if she could force it open by pressure alone. Sometimes, she told herself, the old archivist had given her nothing but a polished emptiness. And yet, each morning, she placed the question there, not because she believed, because she had promised, and because, very slowly, she began to notice something. On the mornings when she placed the question on the cedar box, before touching her tools, her work did not become painless, but it became clearer. The question still stood nearby, but it did not enter every plank. It did not strike every nail. It did not speak through every customer's voice. There were moments, small and almost hidden, when her attention belonged fully to the boat before her. A crack in the hull, a strip of wood needing to be warmed, the smell of resin opening under heat, the sound of her own breathing as she bent close to the work. These moments did not answer her grief, but they gave her back pieces of the day that grief had been using as storage. One morning, near the end of winter, a young fisherman came to her carrying a broken rudder. He was barely grown, with red hands and eyes lowered in embarrassment. "I struck the east stones," he said. "My father told me not to take the narrow channel. I thought I knew better." Marin looked at the damage. It was worse than he understood. The wood had split deep near the joint. "I need it repaired by tomorrow," he said quickly. "If I cannot go out, we lose the market price." Marin felt irritation rise young men and their certainty. Boats and their breaking water and its appetite. All the old bitterness came close, moving fast, wanting a place to land. Her eyes went to the cedar box on the bench. That morning's question lay on top of it. Why was I left behind? The paper was still damp from ink. For a moment, she wanted to say no, not because the repair was impossible, but because the boy's urgency touched something in her that did not want to be touched. Some part of her wanted the world to pause on the anniversary of her pain. Some part of her wanted the canal, the village, the boats, the market, the careless young, the hungry families, the morning itself, to understand that she was still waiting for an answer. Her hand closed, then she breathed. Only once, not beautifully, not peacefully, just enough to feel the air enter her chest before the old reaction became words. She looked again at the boy's hands. They were shaking, and suddenly she understood that he had not come to insult her grief with his need. He had come because something in his small life had broken, and he did not yet know how to repair it. Marin touched the rudder. "Sit," she said. The boy blinked. "Can it be fixed?" "Not by tomorrow if you keep talking." He sat. For the first time in many years, on that particular morning, she worked with another person in the room. She heated resin. She shaved the split edges. She showed him how to hold the joint steady, how not to rush pressure into weak wood, how a repair must follow the grain rather than conquer it. The boy listened. Outside, mist lifted slowly from the canal. Light entered the workshop in thin silver lines. At one point, while the resin cooled, the boy looked at the cedar box. "What is that?" Maren almost said nothing. Instead, after a pause, she said, "A place where I put a question before it becomes my whole day." The boy did not understand, but he nodded as if the tone of her voice told him enough. And there, in the smell of warmed cedar and river damp, Maren felt a realization come quietly, without triumph. The question might never be answered by the sea. It might never be answered by a record, a witness, a returned boat, a dream, or the mouth of the one who had vanished. But if she kept demanding that the world explain her loss before she offered tenderness to anything still living, then the disappearance would take more than one life. It would take her hands, her mornings, her capacity to repair what remained in front of her. She did not forgive the sea. She did not stop missing him. She did not become peaceful in the way people imagine after hearing stories of wisdom. She only stopped, for that one morning, treating the unanswered question as the only truth in the room. When the rudder was finished, the boy bowed too deeply and nearly knocked over a jar of nails. Maren caught the jar before it fell. A small sound escaped her, almost a laugh, though softer and sadder than laughter had once been. After he left, she stood alone in the workshop. The cedar box waited on the bench. Her question still lay on its lid. The ink had dried. She picked up the paper, expecting the old pull, the familiar ache that said, "Carry me, open me, become me." The ache was there, but it was not alone. Beside it was the memory of the boy's shaking hands, the warm resin, the repaired rudder, the way one broken thing had been tended while another remained unanswered. Maren folded the paper once, then again. She lifted the lid of the cedar box. For the first time, she noticed that the box had no hollow bottom. Inside was not emptiness, but polished wood, smooth and shallow. It had never been made to store papers. It had been made to receive the gesture of placing something down. She understood then what Master Edo had meant. The box opened from the inside, not because it hid a secret mechanism, but because something inside her had to open before the question could stop being a wall. She set the folded paper inside for one breath, then took it out and placed it back on the lid. Not gone, not buried, only no longer ruling. The next year, she still wrote the question. The year after that, she wrote it again. But some mornings, the words were smaller. Some mornings, she only touched the cedar lid and went to work. Some mornings she cried before sunrise and repaired boats by noon. Some mornings she felt angry at the water. Some mornings she watched mist lift from the canal and did not ask it to become an answer. And when villagers brought broken things to her, she no longer felt that every crack was mocking the one crack she could not mend. She repaired what could be repaired. She bowed inwardly to what could not, and slowly, without the world explaining itself, her life began to widen around the unanswered place. Siwa, and this widening, dear friend, is often how healing truly begins, not as a sudden answer falling from the sky, not as a perfect explanation placed into the hand, not as the past finally arranging itself into a story that no longer hurts. More often, healing begins as a little more space around what still hurts, a little more room to breathe beside what has not been solved, a little more kindness toward the part of you that has been waiting at the edge of the canal, or beside the low lamp, or in the quiet room of your own chest, hoping that life would finally speak clearly. There is a reason unanswered questions can feel so unbearable. The mind does not like open loops. It wants to complete the pattern, Close the circle. Finish the sentence. When something painful happens without explanation, the mind feels as though it has been handed a torn page from a story and asked to live with the missing half. So it begins working. It searches, it compares, it rehearses, it asks the same question in new clothing. Maybe if I had done something differently. Maybe if I had noticed sooner. Maybe if I had been calmer, wiser, more lovable, less needy, more patient, less afraid. Maybe then the letter would have opened. This is how self-judgment quietly enters the room. At first, you may think you are only trying to understand what happened. But slowly the question changes shape. It stops asking, "Why did this happen?" and begins asking, "What is wrong with me that this happened?" It stops searching for truth and begins searching for a flaw in the self. The mind thinks that if it can locate the flaw, it can repair the future. But often it only creates another wound. You suffer once from the event itself, then you suffer again from the story that says you should have prevented it, predicted it, explained it, or risen above it sooner. This second pain can become heavier than the first because it follows you everywhere. The first pain may have happened in one place, on one day, through one person, in one season of life. But the second pain repeats itself in the mind. It wakes you at night. It sits beside you when you try to eat. It whispers while you work. It turns a sealed letter into a courtroom and then asks you to stand there for years defending your own heart. Buddhist wisdom is tender because it sees this clearly. It understands that pain comes with being alive. Bodies change. People leave. Plans fail. Love can be uncertain. Words can be misunderstood. Effort can go unseen. The world can break our expectations without pausing to explain itself. This is the pain life brings. But then there is the pain the mind adds, the tightening, the demand, the refusal to let the wound be a wound unless it also becomes a complete explanation. The belief that if we cannot control what happened, we must at least control the meaning of it. And when meaning does not come, the mind may begin to punish itself for not finding it. Maybe you have known this punishment, not always as harsh words. Sometimes it is quieter. It is the feeling that you are not allowed to relax because you have not understood enough. It is the sense that you must keep reviewing the past so you do not become careless again. It is the fear that if you stop thinking about what hurt you, then you are betraying yourself. It is the belief that peace would mean giving up the search for justice. But peace does not ask you to betray the truth. Peace asks whether suffering must be fed every night in order for truth to be honored. There is a difference between remembering and reopening. There is a difference between learning and circling. There is a difference between holding a sealed letter with care and scraping at the wax until your fingers bleed. Healthy reflection has a certain quietness in it. It may be painful, but it brings clarity. It helps you see what happened, what mattered, what you can choose differently, what boundary you need, what grief needs tenderness, what action is still possible. It is like reading by morning light when the hands are steady. Rumination has a different feeling. It has heat, urgency, pressure. It tells you the answer must come now. It tells you that if you think harder, you can force the past to become kind. It does not end in clarity. It ends in exhaustion. It is like trying to read a sealed letter in the dark by pressing it against your face. Maybe, as you listen, you can feel the difference in your own body. When the mind is reflecting wisely, there may be sadness, but there is also space. When the mind is trapped in demand, the body tightens, the forehead contracts, The jaw holds, the stomach turns. The breath waits, the present moment disappears because the mind has gone back to interrogate a room that is no longer open. And this is where control hides. Control is not always loud. Sometimes it looks like planning. Sometimes it looks like analysis. Sometimes it looks like being responsible. Sometimes it even looks like healing work. But beneath it, there may be a frightened wish. Let me understand everything, so I will never be hurt like this again. Dear friend, of course the mind wants this. It is not foolish for wanting safety. It is not shameful for wanting life to become predictable. It is not wrong that some part of you wants the letter to open and say, here is why. Here is how to avoid pain forever. Here is the sentence that will protect you from uncertainty. But no letter can promise that. No explanation, however complete, can make life fully controllable. You might understand why someone left and still feel the grief of their leaving. You might understand why you made a mistake and still have to live through the tenderness of forgiving yourself. You might understand why a season unfolded as it did and still be asked to walk forward without knowing what comes next. This is not because life is cruel. It is because life is alive. And what is alive cannot be held still long enough for the mind to make it perfectly safe. Impermanence is not only the passing of beautiful things, it is also the passing of mental certainty, the answer you think would save you. Tonight may not satisfy the person you become next year. The explanation you crave may shift. The wound may change shape. The self who is asking may soften, deepen, grow, and one day discover that the question was not the whole story. But when pain becomes identity, the sealed letter is no longer something you carry. It becomes who you believe you are. You may begin to think, I am the one who was left. I am the one who was not chosen. I am the one who never received an answer. I am the one who always has to understand alone. And each time the mind repeats this, the letter presses deeper into the pillow of the self. Buddhist wisdom gently asks us to notice that identity is often built from repeated attention. What we visit again and again begins to feel like home, even when it hurts us. A thought repeated for years can feel more real than the breath happening now. A question carried too tightly can feel more intimate than the body that carries it. But awareness offers a quiet interruption. It says, this is a story the mind is holding. It may contain truth, but it is not the whole truth. It may name pain, but it does not name all of me. It may explain a wound, but it does not have to become my entire life. This is not denial, it is mercy. Because you are more than the unanswered letter. You are also the hand that can place it down. You are also the breath that continues. You are also the awareness that notices the hand reaching. You are also the warmth that can return to the body when the mind stops leaning all its weight on one unfinished page. There is another subtle suffering that often appears with unanswered questions, the need for approval. Sometimes the mind says, if they would only explain, then I would know. I mattered. If they would only apologize, then I would know my pain was real. If life would only show me the reason, then I would know I was not foolish for hurting. But dear friend, your pain does not become real only when someone else recognizes it. A sealed letter does not have to be opened by the one who wrote it in order for you to treat your own heart with respect. You may never receive the answer that proves you were worth tenderness, but your worth was never inside their reply. You may never receive the apology that confirms the wound, but compassion does not need permission from the one who caused harm. You may never understand why life took a certain shape, But your breath can still be met with kindness here, now in this room. This is where the practice becomes very simple and very deep. We cannot always prevent the first pain. We cannot make every person honest, every ending clear, every loss explainable, every road safe before we walk it. But we can begin to see when the second pain is being fed. We can notice when the mind has returned to the seal with shaking fingers. We can pause before turning a question into a sentence against ourselves. We can let uncertainty be painful without making it proof that we are unsafe in this very moment. Peace is not the absence of difficulty. Peace is a different relationship with difficulty. It is the difference between sleeping on the sealed letter and placing it beside the lamp. It is the difference between demanding that the past speak before the body rests and allowing the body to rest while the past remains silent. It is the difference between becoming the question and being the awareness that can hold the question gently. Perhaps this sounds small, but small shifts are not weak. A breath before replaying the memory is a shift. A softened jaw in the presence of uncertainty is a shift. The decision not to search for one more sign tonight is a shift. The kindness to say, I do not know, and I can still place my hand on my heart, is a shift. The courage to let the sealed letter remain sealed until daylight is a shift. And many such shifts, gathered quietly, become a path. Not a path away from life, but a path back into life. Back into the room where you are breathing. Back into the body that has carried you. Back into the ordinary sounds of night. Back into the possibility that, even without an explanation, this moment can be less cruel than the mind has made it. So when the old question comes, perhaps you do not need to bow down before it as if it were your master. You can greet it as a letter. You can feel the ache of it. You can admit that you wish it would open. And then, with as much gentleness as you can find, you can place it down again. Not because it is unimportant, because your life is larger than the sealed page. Sua. And perhaps you can feel this path, not only in the quiet images of old shrines and river archives, but in the small rooms of your own modern life. Because the sealed letters are not always made of paper. Sometimes they glow in your hand as a phone screen. You send a message and the reply does not come, or it comes with fewer words than you hoped. Or you see that someone has been present elsewhere, speaking elsewhere, smiling elsewhere, while your question sits unanswered in the small bright window of your device. And then the mind begins its old work. It turns the silence over. It studies the time. It reads the last message again. It imagines tone where there may be none. It tries to open the letter by staring at the screen. Maybe they are upset. Maybe I said too much. Maybe I am not important. Maybe this means something is ending. And before you know it, dear friend, the body has left the room. The breath has become thin. The jaw has tightened. The heart is waiting for a sound from the phone, as if that sound could decide your worth. In such a moment, the teaching can become very small and very practical. You might place the phone down, not forever, not as a punishment, only for one breath. You might notice, this is a sealed letter. The answer is not here right now. My mind is trying to tear it open. Then you might feel your feet or your hands or the fabric beneath you. You might let one exhale leave before you decide what to do next. This is not weakness. A breath before answering is a form of wisdom. A breath before checking again is a form of protection. A breath before believing the most painful story is a way of returning the letter to the table beside the lamp. Peace is practiced in small moments, not only in temples, not only on cushions, not only when life is already gentle. Peace is practiced when the message has not arrived, and you do not abandon yourself in the waiting. Peace is practiced when the past offers no clean explanation, and you do not make your body pay for the silence. Peace is practiced when the mind says, "Open it now, solve it now, know it now," and awareness quietly answers. Not every thought deserves obedience. Maybe you lie awake at night and replay a mistake, something you said too quickly, something you did not understand until later, a face you disappointed, a chance you did not take, a version of yourself you wish you could return to with more patience, more courage, more wisdom. The mind may write the same letter again and again, each time with sharper ink. Why did I do that? Why was I not better? Why did I not know then what I know now? And because the past cannot answer, the mind may begin to use shame as if shame were a teacher. It may say, if I punish myself enough, I will become safe. If I keep the mistake near, I will never repeat it. If I refuse to rest, perhaps I can prove that I care. But shame is a poor lantern. It gives heat without clear light. You can learn without burning yourself all night. You can take responsibility without turning the self into an enemy. You can regret something and still place the sealed letter down until morning. There may be a time to apologize, to repair, to choose differently, to write honestly, to ask for help, to change a pattern. But midnight punishment is rarely the same as wisdom. Often, it is only the mind pressing its head against the envelope, hoping the pressure will rewrite what happened. If a mistake visits you tonight, perhaps you can meet it differently. Not with denial, not with harshness, only with the soft recognition. This is a letter from the past. It may contain something to learn, but I do not have to cut myself open to receive the lesson. And now this teaching comes closer to the places where you compare yourself. You see someone else, moving forward, reaching something, being celebrated, seeming certain, loved, successful, chosen, and quietly, almost without permission, a letter opens inside you. Though no one sent it, it says, "Why am I not there yet? Why is my life slower? Why does their path look clear while mine feels unfinished? Why do I feel as if I am arriving late to my own becoming?" The modern world gives the mind many sealed letters, images without full stories, smiles without context, achievements without the hidden nights behind them. We compare our inner archive to another person's polished envelope, and then wonder why the heart feels tired. Dear friend, when comparison arises, you might remember the moon cannot be measured by a receipt, and a life cannot be understood from a passing image. But even this thought does not need to become another lesson you force upon yourself. Simply notice the ache, notice the reaching. Notice the old demand that life explain why your timing is not someone else's timing. Then return to the present object in your hands. The cup, the blanket, the door handle, the small task waiting before you, the breath. A single moment fully touched can interrupt the trance of measuring the whole life. You do not have to become enough by tonight. You do not have to prove that your path has meaning before your body is allowed to rest. There are also sealed letters inside relationships. Perhaps you try to control another person because uncertainty feels too painful. You want to know what they feel, what they mean, where the future is going, whether they will stay, whether you are safe inside their attention. So the mind begins to ask questions, not always with words, but through checking, testing, withdrawing, clinging, imagining, preparing, fearing. It may feel like love. Sometimes it is fear wearing love's clothing. You can care deeply without gripping tightly. You can love someone and still let their silence be their silence for a while. You can ask clearly without interrogating. You can offer warmth without making your peace depend on the exact shape of their reply. You can hold a relationship with open hands, not because you do not care whether it stays, but because gripping has never turned uncertainty into safety. When fear rises, perhaps you can say inwardly, "A feeling is here, but not every feeling is a command." Fear may ask you to send another message. Fear may ask you to accuse. Fear may ask you to disappear first, so you cannot be left. Fear may ask you to search for proof that something is wrong. But fear is not always a messenger from truth. Sometimes fear is only an old letter with familiar handwriting. You can read the name on the outside and still choose not to open it in the dark. In daily life, you may also carry the sealed letters no one sees. You may smile while feeling heavy inside. You may answer, "I am fine," while a question presses at the back of the throat. You may sit among people and feel strangely alone because no one knows how much you are still trying to understand. You may want rest, but feel guilty for resting, as if exhaustion must be justified by achievement, as if the body needs a signed permission slip from the world before it may lie down. But, dear friend, you can rest without earning it. The breath does not ask what you finished today. The pillow does not ask whether you understood your life. The night does not require a report. The body is not a machine that deserves care only after producing enough, pleasing enough, explaining enough, fixing enough, becoming enough. The body is a living shore where all your unanswered letters have washed up. It needs gentleness, not because every question is solved, but because carrying questions is tiring. So tomorrow, or whenever the next day begins, you might practice in very ordinary ways. When the phone is in your hand and the heart starts leaning toward it, pause for one breath before checking. When a memory rises and asks to be replayed, place a hand somewhere steady and say, "This can wait for daylight." When you feel behind, look at one real thing in the room and let it remind you that your life is happening here, not inside the imagined timeline. When you are tempted to explain yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you, ask whether the letter truly has an address or whether you are trying to mail your piece to a closed door. When you feel not enough, notice whether you are asking another person, another achievement, another answer to open a sealed place in you that may need compassion more than proof. Small moments, small returns, small acts of not obeying the loudest thought. This is how the teaching enters a life. Not as a grand transformation that makes you untouchable, but as a softer way of moving through the same world. You still receive uncertain messages, you still make mistakes. You still love people whose hearts you cannot control. You still face mornings that do not explain the night before. But you begin to notice the hand reaching for the sealed. And in that noticing, a new path appears. You can choose not to tear. You can choose to breathe. You can choose to place the letter down until the heart is steadier. You can choose one compassionate action while the question remains unanswered. Perhaps you drink water. Perhaps you turn the phone face down. Perhaps you write one honest line and leave it there. Perhaps you step outside and feel the air. Perhaps you wash a cup slowly. Perhaps you let your body lie down even while the mind insists the case is unfinished. This is not avoidance. Avoidance throws the letter into a locked room and pretends it does not exist. Wisdom places it where it can be seen without being worshipped. You may still return to the question. You may still have nights when the seal seems to glow in the dark. But each time you remember, that the letter is not your whole life. A little more space opens. Each time you let the body rest, before certainty comes, the nervous system learns a new language. Each time you meet uncertainty without attacking yourself, compassion becomes less like an idea and more like a place you can live. And perhaps the most tender practice is this. When you notice yourself pretending to be okay, you do not have to collapse, and you do not have to perform. You can simply tell yourself the truth quietly. Something in me is heavy tonight. Something in me still wants an answer. Something in me is tired from holding the envelope so tightly. Then breathe. Not to fix it, to accompany it. Because sometimes, what heals us is not the answer arriving, but the end of being alone with the question. And when you sit beside your own heart, without demanding that it become clear, you become the gentle presence you were waiting for from the world. The letter may remain sealed, but you are no longer leaving yourself outside its door, sir. And perhaps, as the night becomes quieter around you, the practice can become even simpler. No need to reach for anything now. No need to improve this moment. No need to make the mind perfectly empty. Let the body be exactly as tired as it is. Let the breath be as quiet as it wants to be. Let the sealed letter remain where you placed it, somewhere nearby in the soft room of your imagination, not hidden beneath your head, not clutched in your hands, not pressed against the chest as proof that you still care, just resting there, touched by a little moonlight, its paper pale, its thread loose enough to no longer frighten you. The question may still be inside. The missing words may still be inside. The old why may still be folded there. But tonight, it does not need to become the center of the room. Feel the pillow beneath you again. Feel how it receives the weight of your head without asking what you have solved. Feel the blanket resting over the body. Warm in some places, light in others. Feel the places where your body touches the bed. Shoulder, back, hip, legs, heels. The whole body slowly remembering that it belongs not only to thought, not only to memory, not only to old questions, but to this quiet night. Take a slow breath if it feels right. Let the inhale arrive like cool air moving through a paper screen. Let the exhale leave like a hand releasing the edge of an envelope. Again, nothing forced. Again, nothing taken away. The breath enters. The breath leaves. The letter rests. The body softens. Perhaps the room is dark, or nearly dark. Perhaps moonlight lies somewhere across the wall, thin and still. Perhaps outside, trees are moving in a way you cannot see, only sense. Perhaps the night air touches the window and passes on. Everything is moving gently, without needing to explain itself. The air does not explain where it has been. The moonlight does not explain why it falls, where it falls. The body does not explain how it keeps breathing. It simply continues, quietly faithful to this moment. You may let your forehead become smooth. You may let the eyes sink back into rest. You may let the jaw loosen, as if the words you did not receive and the words you could not say are no longer being held between the teeth. The throat can soften, the shoulders can drop, the hands can grow still. If one hand still wants to reach for the letter, that is all right. Let it be seen. Let it be understood. That hand has been loyal to your pain for a long time. It thought searching was devotion. It thought tension was protection. It thought that if it stopped trying to open the letter, your heart would be abandoned. But your heart is not abandoned. You are here with it, breathing with it, listening to it, without demanding that it become clear. And maybe this is what returning home feels like. Not dramatic, not bright, not complete, but intimate. A slow return from the far country of explanation to the near country of the body. A return from the corridors of why to the small shelter of this breath. A return from the sealed page to the living hand that can finally open. Not the letter, the hand. Open enough to rest on the blanket. Open enough to stop gripping the dark. Open enough to feel that uncertainty may be painful, but it does not have to own the whole night. Let the teaching settle, not in the mind as something to remember, but in the body as something it can sense. A question can remain. A life can continue. A heart can care. A body can sleep. A sealed letter can rest beside the moonlit window, and nothing terrible has to happen because you are not opening it now. There may be other nights when you pick it up again. There may be mornings when the question feels sharp. There may be days when you search for meaning, or ask for truth, or speak what needs to be spoken. That is allowed. Wisdom is not a command to become silent forever. It is the ability to know when the searching has become suffering, and when the kindest thing is to place the letter down. Tonight, the kindest thing may be this: to let the body become heavy, to let the breath become quiet, to let the room hold you, to let the unanswered remain unanswered without turning it into a weapon against your rest. Perhaps you can imagine the sealed letter one last time. See it, not beneath the pillow, but on a small wooden table near the window. The moonlight touches one corner of the envelope. The thread around it is soft, indigo dark in the silver light. The seal is unbroken, but it no longer looks like a refusal. It looks like something without urgency, something that can remain until daylight, something that does not need your body's exhaustion as proof of its importance. Around it, the room is spacious. There is air around the letter. There is silence around the question. There is breath around the ache, and there is you, no longer collapsed into the unanswered thing, but resting near it with a softer heart. Let the breath move in. Let the breath move out. Let the next thought come, if it comes. Let the next thought pass, if it passes. You do not need to follow every sentence the mind begins. You do not need to attend every hearing in the old courtroom of memory. You do not need to stand before the past tonight and ask it to justify itself. You may step away from the door. You may let the hallway grow dim. You may return to the bed, the pillow, the quiet weight of the blanket. Nothing is required of you now, not understanding, not forgiveness before its time, not strength that pretends not to hurt, not a perfect calm, only this gentle willingness to stop pressing for a while, only this soft permission to be unfinished and still held, only this breath arriving without a reason, only this breath leaving without a reason. Again and again, the body grows heavier, the forehead smooths, the mouth softens, the shoulders release a little more of what they never had to carry alone. The chest opens by a small amount, not because the old ache has vanished, but because the ache is no longer being squeezed so tightly. The belly rises, the belly falls, the legs sink, the hands rest. Somewhere near the window, the letter remains, but now it is only one object in a quiet room. Not the whole room, not the whole life, not the whole self. And perhaps this is the mercy you were looking for without knowing it. Not an answer that explains every wound, but a tenderness wide enough to hold you while the answer is absent. Not a reason that makes the past painless, but a breath that proves the present is still open. Not the breaking of the seal, but the ending of the struggle to break it tonight. Let the night be gentle with what you cannot know. Let the body receive what the mind has been postponing. Let sleep come near without needing permission from the past. If dreams come, let them come like folded paper, drifting on quiet water. If silence comes, let it be enough. If the question returns, let it find you softer than before. You do not have to solve your whole life tonight. You do not have to open every sealed thing before closing your eyes. The letters can wait by the window. The moon can keep them company. And you, dear friend, can let your breathing become the only message you need to receive for now. Perhaps tonight, the answer is not hidden inside the sealed letter, but in the quiet moment when your tired hand finally lets it rest.